Okay, so we're diving into this crazy global event from the mid-6th century. We weren't around to see it, obviously,
So.
but we do have a ton of research and historical accounts to dig through.
Yeah, we've got a lot to work with.
Let's see what really went down. What do you say?
Sounds good to me.
All right, so first clue, this is pretty wild, comes from trees.
Oh.
Like not just any trees, but the ones that have been around for centuries. They hold secrets.
Right?
Secrets that are locked in their rings, and scientists are just now figuring them out.
Yeah, it's called dendrochronology, basically, studying tree rings.
So how does that even work? Break it down for us.
So picture this. A tree grows outward, right? Every year, it adds a new ring. Wide ring, good year, sun, rain, the works. Narrow ring, that's a red flag.
Oh.
Exactly. Means tough times, maybe a drought, a harsh winter, or something blocking out the sunlight.
Like a hidden message in the wood itself.
Right, and get this. Scientists compare these rings from trees all over the world.
Oh, wow.
And they use that to piece together a timeline of past climate events.
That's incredible. So we're talking about a 7,500-year record from those Irish oaks. That's even older than the pyramids.
Older, yeah. And it gives us this amazing baseline, you know. We can compare what was happening in the 6th century to what's normal over a much longer period.
So when you look at those rings, the ones from the 530s, 540s AD, how weird is that period?
It's not just weird, it's concerning. The rings are way narrower than they should be. Means a long period of cold, less sunlight.
And this is global, right? Not just one region.
Global. We're seeing this same pattern in trees from California, Chile, even Siberia. This wasn't just a cold snap.
So this is a huge deal. And not just for the trees, right? People must have been freaking out.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine years without enough sun, crops fail, famine hits, and societies start to crumble.
And that's where those cranogs come in, those island forts, like something out of a fantasy novel.
They do, don't they? Cranogs are those artificial islands, usually built in lakes or marshes, used in Ireland and Scotland for centuries.
Right, and I was reading about how there was this surge in cranog construction in Ireland at the exact same time that the tree rings show this crazy climate shift.
Exactly. People were literally abandoning their homes, everything they knew, to seek refuge on these tiny islands. It had to be bad.
Talk about desperate times. These weren't just minor inconveniences. This was their entire world falling apart.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder just how widespread this sense of fear and desperation really was.
I mean, did people even connect the dots back then? Did they know this was a global thing? We see it in the tree rings, but did they get it?
It's really something, isn't it? They might not have known the full scale, but they're writing. It just shows how deeply unsettling it all was.
You mean those old records like Chronicles and stuff?
Right, and luckily some of them survive.
Yeah.
Gives us a window into what they saw, what they lived through.
So what kind of things were they writing about?
Okay, imagine this. The sun just dims for months, even years. The whole world's stuck in twilight. Can you imagine the fear?
It'd be like the world was ending, right?
Exactly. And that's what comes through in these writings. Take John of Ephesus, a historian, lived in Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire.
Right.
He wrote about the sun losing its brilliance, becoming this, feeble shadow. Said everyone declared that the sun would never recover its full light.
Wow, that's intense. But he wasn't the only one, right?
No way. Other parts of the world, same thing.
Yeah.
China, for example, they talk about this yellow dust falling from the sky, blocking out the sun, turning the snow this weird color.
Yellow snow.
Yeah.
And not from, pollution. That's wild.
Totally. And it wasn't just what they saw. Think about the fear, the unknown. Back then, people looked to the heavens for everything. When the sun goes haywire, it's got to feel apocalyptic.
Makes me think of that research about ancient Korea. They mentioned these weird sounds in the air, like thunder, but going on and on.
Right. Those accounts are huge. They tell us something else was up with the atmosphere, something beyond just dust. These low-frequency sounds, infrasound, they can travel for thousands of miles. Yeah. We might not hear them, but they can mess with us, make us uneasy. And they usually mean something big. Volcanoes, meteors.
So it's like, on top of everything else, this extra layer of weirdness. No wonder they were terrified. Makes you think, though, maybe they were putting the pieces together, seeing something strange nearby, then hearing whispers of similar things far away.
It's an intriguing idea, and it could have happened. Think of the Silk Road, how it connected everything. News would have traveled along those routes with the merchants.
Right. So if stories from China were getting to Constantinople, what about the Americas? Did those civilizations see anything?
Their written records are tougher to piece together, but there's evidence. Tree rings, ice cores from both South and North America. They were hit with climate change too, same time period.
So different cultures, opposite sides of the world, all going through this weirdness at the same time. It has to be something global. But what could cause that kind of disruption?
It's a million-dollar question, right?
It's kind of hard to wrap your head around, what could actually dim the sun like that, mess with the whole planet for years, like disaster movie stuff, but for real.
It's a question that's kept scientists guessing for ages.
So what are we thinking? What are the big contenders?
All right, well, let's get the crazy one out of the way first. Imagine.
Yeah.
Asteroid, huge, slamming into Earth. Or a comet burning across the sky before it breaks up in the atmosphere.
Those are dinosaur-killing events, right? Like those giant craters we can still see.
Exactly. Something that big would be, well, the end. Vaporized rock, earthquakes, tsunamis.
Yikes.
And then there's the dust. Tons of it, filling the atmosphere, blocking out the sun. Instant ice age.
Okay, so space impact is on the table. But what about our volcano? Volcanoes always seemed more local to me. Lots of noise and fire, sure, but contained, right? Could one volcano really mess up the whole world?
Absolutely, and here's why. That volcano isn't just messing with its immediate surroundings. When a volcano erupts hard enough, it doesn't just chuck out lava and ash. We're talking massive amounts of sulfur dioxide, pumped high into the atmosphere, into what we call the stratosphere.
Okay, so back to Earth science class.
Yeah.
What's so special about the stratosphere?
It's like the long-haul trucker of the atmosphere. Down low, weather patterns keep things moving, right? But up in the stratosphere, stuff can hang out for years, traveling the globe.
So it's not just ash falling on one spot. It's spreading everywhere.
Bingo. And this volcanic stuff, especially that sulfur dioxide, it's like a mirror. It bounces sunlight back into space, away from us, cools the planet down a volcanic winter.
So even if it erupts on one side of the world, the effects go everywhere.
Exactly. And unlike an asteroid, which leaves that giant crater calling card, a supervolcano from way back, that can be tough to pin down. Luckily, we have a way to look back in time. Ice cores.
Right, the polar ice caps, like those tree rings, but for the whole planet.
Exactly. Every year, snow falls on the ice caps, trapping dust, ash, gases, everything. Scientists drill down, pull up these long tubes of ice, and bam, they can analyze what the atmosphere was like thousands of years ago.
So what are those ice cores saying about the 6th century? Asteroid or volcano?
This is where it gets really interesting. Both Greenland and Antarctica, they show this massive spike in sulfuric acid right around 535 AD.
Sulfuric acid, like battery acid.
The one and only. Don't worry, the atmosphere wasn't turning into battery acid. But that spike, that's a volcanic calling card. Volcanoes erupt, they release sulfur dioxide, turns into sulfuric acid, gets trapped in the ice.
So the ice is like a fingerprint. But can we tell how big this eruption was? Could one eruption really cause all the stuff we've been talking about?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Most volcanoes, they're impressive, sure, but local. But every now and then, boom, a super eruption. Way bigger, way worse.
So not your average backyard volcano.
Not even close. We're talking thousands of cubic kilometers of stuff ejected into the atmosphere. Ash, rock, enough sulfur dioxide to blanket the entire planet for years, decades even. And when we start looking for a volcano that fits the bill, one name keeps popping up. Krakatoa.
Krakatoa, isn't that little island in Indonesia? I always thought it was just, a regular volcano.
Ah, but that's the thing. The Krakatoa everyone knows, the one from 1883, that was nothing compared to what scientists think happened way back, sometime between 6,600 BC and 1215 AD.
So we're talking about an ancient eruption. How can we possibly know about something that far back?
It's like detective work, right? Recent expeditions to Krakatoa, they found evidence of an insane eruption. A caldera, miles wide, hidden underwater, volcanic debris everywhere. Carbon dating puts it sometime before the 13th century, right in the time period we need.
Okay, so that's the when, but what about the where? Was this Krakatoa eruption really a global event?
Remember those Chinese accounts, the yellow dust? Those same records talk about this thunder sound coming from the southwest in February of 535 AD.
Southwest, like toward Indonesia.
You got it. Now, sound doesn't usually travel across oceans, right? But there's a type of sound, infrasound, that can travel for thousands of miles. We can't hear it, but instruments can, and it often means a big volcanic eruption.
So you're saying those weird sounds in Korea, maybe even in Ireland, could have been Krakatoa thousands of miles away.
It's possible.
Yeah.
And there's more. The Javanese Book of Kings, it talks about this catastrophic event, lines up perfectly with our time frame. Darkness, thunder, floods, even Java splitting in two.
That's a bit too much of a coincidence, don't you think? Feels like everything we've got, the trees, the ice, the historical accounts, they all point to this ancient Krakatoa eruption.
It really does, doesn't it? And it makes you realize we're all connected, even across centuries. What happens on one side of the world can ripple out, change everything. It's a reminder that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves, something powerful and awe-inspiring, and sometimes a little bit terrifying. But hey, that's history for you, right? Always full of surprises.